We are live streaming. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Football Outsiders live stream for Monday, December 27th, 2021. Almost done with the year. Had our last Sunday of football for 2021 yesterday. Want to thank you all for joining us, whether you are seeing us on YouTube or Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, or in the corner of our site in the little widget. We're listening to us afterwards on the Football Outsiders Podcast Network. Thank you all for joining us while we review Week 16. Please subscribe to the show on your platform of choice. Remember, we are here every day, weekdays, that is, 1 o'clock Eastern, talking football. And I'm joined, as always, on Monday by Ian O'Connor from EdjSports to talk about decisions that coaches made. And the thing about this week was that there were a lot of them, and they were good. I do not remember the number, but I have seen multiple people on the internet pointing out that more coaches went for it on 4th and short this week than like ever before, and they had a lot of success doing it. So we won. We've won the argument.
Yeah, I think that's what Frank is writing the Risky Business column about, and it's our numbers when I was looking at it this morning came out the like non-obvious, not just 4th and shorts, but non-obvious kind of late game situation goes. We had 35 of them out of a total of, I think it was about 100 opportunities for a 35% go rate, which is the highest of the season so far, highest that I can remember. I don't think we had one that high anytime last year, or really maybe anytime ever. So it was a very good week, as you mentioned, for analytics and some really good 4th down decisions this week.
Yeah, the biggest game of the week was the Buffalo Bills at the New England Patriots, and I believe that both of these teams had 4 4th down goes, not counting the Patriots, at the end of the game in desperation. The Bills, with their 6th game of the year with DVOA over 50%, like they are absurdly inconsistent, but when they are good, they are really good. And Josh Allen was fantastic. And the Bills and Patriots are tied. And I think there's a little bit of overstatement of what a statement the Bills made in this game. If the two games had been switched, and the Bills had won the first and the Patriots would won the second, we would be talking instead about the statement that the Patriots made. And essentially they're tied, but the Bills do have the tiebreaker, so the Bills are probably going to win the division. Let's talk about coaching decisions in this one because so many good 4th down goes. It was very exciting for a Patriots fan like me to see Bill Belichick actually get aggressive.
Yeah, it was really, really fun to see. Like from the get-go, he was on it. You mentioned each of these coaches had 4 4th down goes. And what was really cool about this game, we saw the Brandon Staley game last week where went for it. They converted a couple, but didn't always get the scores out of it. And in this one, New England had 4 4th down goes. They had 2 on 2 separate drives, both of which resulted in touchdowns. Buffalo had 4 4th down goes on 4 separate drives. 3 of those 4 they converted, and those 3 they ended up scoring touchdowns. So again, just another kind of win in the argument, at least for this week, of teams going for it. And Buffalo, had the one they were set to go on like 4th and 6 or 4th and 7. I think they were going to go for it. There's really no way to tell. New England jumped off sides, and they went for it on the 4th and 2 from the 34, which is all around really good calls. The Belichick came into this game only 15th in our coach rankings, 29th in CCI. As you know, he's been very conservative this year, whereas Sean McDermott came into this game 5th overall, but only, I think, 13th or 14th, or around the middle of the pack in CCI for him. But, Belichick was just, I guess you can't really overstate it, was just very good in this one. Added 14.6% in pre-snap win probability on those 4 decisions, which is very good. That's averaging, almost, between 5 and 6 or 4 and 5% there. Really good. McDermott had the 4, and his added up to a total of 9.4. Again, really good decisions. Not as big on those. The Bills, I think we had favored once they got up. They were high in win probability, so not huge swings, but still almost 10% for him, 14. Just really good all around. Like I said, I don't think we can really overstate how awesome it was to watch that game and those decisions.
Yes, Chad Reuter points out in the discussion, going for it on 4th was Belichick's New Year's resolution. I guess some reporter asked him after the game what
Yep.
his New Year's resolution was. He didn't want to answer that
Yeah.
stupid question, but
Yeah.
that's what it was. So more power to him. It will certainly help him in, when they face their annual freak out closer than it should be game against the Miami Dolphins 2 weeks from now. Both of these teams have fairly easy schedules the rest of the way. The Bills play the Falcons, who, our numbers think are really bad, despite the fact that they're 7-8 because they've beaten all the other bad teams, and
the best of the worst.
Probably killed by the Bills, and then the Jets, and then the Patriots have the Jaguars and the Dolphins in their last 2 games.
Yeah, that's interesting too with Belichick this week, kind of coming off that decision we talked about last week, the 4th and 7, 4th and goal from the 7, and on Monday. I think it was before we jumped on here. He had come out and kind of explained it, and it was interesting that he didn't completely write off the idea of going for it. That it went through his head. It was a long explanation, kind of an unusual, I guess, explanation from him. Belichick is kind of known for
he
giving
sounded
very
like
short
he thought
answers.
It through. Yeah,
yes.
It was not a short, curt answer. Like he thought, he sounded like he had thought it through.
Yeah, so it's interesting out on the heels of that to see him this week come out. Like you said, Buffalo, as inconsistent as they are, still knowing that it's going to take more than punts and field goal, field position and field goals to win that game. To see him come out like that was really awesome. And then you mentioned too the couple of the games coming up for Buffalo and Pittsburgh. Another one that I think is really interesting to look at. I guess we'll get to one of these teams here in just a second, but looking at Cincinnati and Cleveland in the AFC North could be really fun because Cleveland's got Pittsburgh next week. Cincinnati's got the Chiefs. Cleveland wins and Cincinnati loses, they would be playing, depending on what Baltimore does, we'll be playing for the division in Week 18, which would be pretty awesome. So lots of good, basically just lots of good, especially in the AFC. Pretty much every spot's up for grabs in that conference.
Yeah, it's a good playoff race. Speaking of Cleveland Browns, let's rewind it a day to Christmas and talk about the Browns and the Packers. Hitchhiker's Pie says, even though they lost, would Belichick's newfound aggression on 4th down make you more confident voting for him as coach of the year? I think I would want to look at the whole year rather than just the one game. So probably not. I don't know how I feel about Belichick as coach of the year. When I sort of thought after the first Buffalo win that he was coach of the year, it was sort of based on the idea that he probably would win one of the next 2 games. And instead they lost both of them while the Colts look fantastic right now. And Reich makes fantastic 4th down decisions and has coached up his team despite injuries and COVID and all that stuff. And it's a tough decision right now for coach of the year. I don't quite know who to pick, to be perfectly honest. Matt LaFleur was my last year was the EdjSports coach of the year. My pick was Sean McDermott last year, but Matt LaFleur was the EdjSports coach of the year. So let's talk about his moves against Cleveland on Christmas Day.
Yeah, a little bit of good, a little bit of bad. The good was early. They had on their first possession after Cleveland had gone down and scored, missed the extra point. So Green Bay's down 6-0. Ended up having our 5th best call of the week. It was at 4th and 1 on their own 34. Good decision to go for it early in the game. You just see, I think, 90% of coaches are going to punt here and just let the game play out, especially with Green Bay being a heavy favorite in this one. Not to, not to put themselves in a hole if they don't get it, but he made the right decision to go for it. It was a 4.8% increase in pre-snap win probability. Not sure how much this actually plays into it, but one thing I thought was interesting in the decision here, a lot of times, especially in these situations early, you'll see them get 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 2, and they pick up, no yards or a yard and punt. But on the play prior to this, they had 3rd and 9, picked up 8 and got down to 4th and 1. Just kind of in the back of my mind wondering if there was a psychological thing like, hey, we just picked up 8 of the 9. We've got Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, Aaron Jones had a run, a pitch or a handoff off to the right that was pretty open. But regardless of why he made the decision, was the correct call. Just really awesome to see a coach do that early. We saw the Rams do it against Green Bay when they were already in a hole. Didn't convert that one, but Green Bay did convert. And it was interesting too. So they converted this. They ended up punting. They punted on 4th and 6 from their own 42, which is ironic. A little bit of foreshadowing for what happened later in the game. I mentioned he had some good and some bad. The bad call ended up being our worst fourth down decision of the week, was also a 4th and 6 at their own 42. So started the game that way, ended it with 2 minutes, 14 seconds left, choosing to punt. This one is, it's very
this
easy.
one comes up a lot where you
Yes.
lose a lot of game-winning chance, but the fact is that it is very difficult for a coach to, if they blow it, to explain to the media why he went for it on a 4th and not 1 in his own side of the field near the end of the
with
game.
the lead. Yeah, with the lead. And this one, the Packers, Baker Mayfield threw 3 interceptions, all led to Packers touchdowns. I think, if I remember correctly, one of those was a pick 6. Or Rasul Douglas, who's been awesome this year since coming to Green Bay. But this one, how many times, though, do we see a guy, Baker Mayfield, not the best quarterback in the league, obviously, but a capable quarterback? And how often do you see
he only had
a guy have a
one
bad
other
game?
game this year. He only had one other game this year with multiple interceptions.
Oh, wow. So, yeah, even, a rare bad game, but even we saw Matt Stafford had 3 picks yesterday, but made some big throws at the end of the game to kind of put that one away. So it's just because you're having a bad game, and it's the Browns over there who don't have Odell Beckham anymore, which whether that's good or bad, can be debated, but still a capable quarterback you mentioned doesn't have, but now 2 multi-touchdown or multi-interception games to give them the ball with the last chance where if they're going to get a field goal to win it, and that's all they need, likely going to be with no time left on the clock. If I'm LaFleur in Green Bay, I want to go down with Rodgers like Brandon Staley does. If you don't get it, Green Bay still had 2 timeouts and 2-minute warning. If Cleveland picks up a first down, Green Bay still has that 2-minute warning and 2 timeouts to stop them at holding to a field goal and give Rodgers 30 seconds, 35 seconds, whatever it may be to get them in field goal range. I would rather do that than to punt the ball away and not have Rodgers even get a shot if they're able to get a field goal. And it was only a 2-point lead, so a field goal loses it. So luckily for the Packers, though, came up clutch, got another interception, which probably should have been a pass interference call on Green Bay, got away with it, and got the interception to essentially end the game there. It was our 3rd most impactful play of the week. The Browns had gotten up to the 50-yard line, 3rd and 10, so had 2 shots at it with 50 seconds left, but the interception cost the Browns 46.9% of their win probability. They still had all 3 of their timeouts, I believe, so they were still like around 1.5%, not all the way down to 0, but obviously just an absolute dagger in that one that ended the game, basically.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Packers are still really low in DVOA. They're only 10th overall, 8th weighted. This was their 3rd best game of the year by DVOA, 35%. But they are 6-2 in 1-possession games this year. They cannot depend on opponents losing because they blow extra points in the playoffs. I just, the interesting.
It's similar to how they were 2 years ago.
It is very similar to 2 years ago. And the thing is, the Packers are going to probably, not definitely, but probably be getting back their best offensive lineman, their best cornerback, and one of the best cornerbacks in the league, and their best edge rusher. And so they're going to be a different team in the playoffs than they are now. But still, based on the team that they've been the last few weeks, you could not, even at home, you could not favor this team to beat Tampa Bay or Dallas.
No, they could definitely, obviously, do it. But yeah, as far as being favored, the game against Baltimore, they were up pretty big and let them come back. I think it's kind of like that defense, like they had been in the past. Remember some years where they bend and bend, but they don't break, and they do just enough to, with the turnovers, which you can never count on, especially against a Tampa Bay that you're not going to get 3 interception games from Brady very often. Even in the playoffs last year, though, he had 3 and they still weren't able to win it. So yeah, you definitely can't count on that, and it's going to get tougher and tougher from here on out for them. So they're with LaFleur usually making the right decisions too. More often than not, he does, so that will help them. But yeah, they're just not playing, as good as their record is. I think, like you said, DVOA, they're not playing as well as what their record indicates, though they're still, I think you said, 8th and weighted. So
yeah, Hitchhiker's Pie points out that the 2019 Packers and the 2015 Panthers both lived off these scripts before getting exposed in the playoffs. Yeah, I don't remember a team that was like this, that was much lower in DVOA than their record because of close wins, that won a Super Bowl. There are teams that just went on runs in the playoffs where they were just they snuck into the playoffs and then went on a run like the 2012 Ravens or the Giants both times, 2007 and 2011. But I don't remember a team that was like 13-3 or 14-2, but like 9th or 10th in DVOA that then went on and turned it on in the playoffs, and all of a sudden, right? Everybody thought Kansas City was that team last year, and they weren't. And like the Carolina Panthers, both in 2015 and in 2003, were like that. And the 2008 Cardinals turned it on in the playoffs. That's probably the best example of a team that was lower in DVOA and then turned it on in the playoffs. But they were only 9-7 in the regular season, so it's not like they were winning a bunch of close games in the regular season. That's closer to like the 2012 Ravens. So, I think if the Packers win, despite being pretty low in DVOA, win the Super Bowl, I think they'll be the first team that's like this, that it's not just that they turned it on in the playoffs, it's that they had lots of wins in the regular season, but their underlying play-by-play. I mean, this is one of the most, I think after this game, one of the most overperforming teams ever by Pythagorean wins. So they've just been amazingly good in close games this year.
Yeah, scraping by.
Don't forget to check out Ian with the updated coach rankings video on Wednesday. Ian and Katie George will have that posted on both EdjSports.com and at Football Outsiders. Let's talk about the most impactful plays of the week. The plays that had the most impact on the game in terms of win probability, either positive or negative. What are we starting with?
And number 5 comes in. It's number 5, but it's probably the most exciting play from the weekend. So we've got the Bears kind of pulling a John Harbaugh here and going for the win at the end of the game, down 1 after Jimmy Graham got the touchdown to pull them within 1 in the snowy game up in Seattle, choosing to go for 2 with 1:01 left, going for the win, and just have the amazing catch by Damiere Byrd to get up. Seahawks tried to push him out of bounds, got a foot and knee in, held onto the ball with one hand, and could pretty much doubled their win probability up 25%. And they were still underdogs to win, though.
I'm silly, because I was going to say it's because there was time left.
Yeah, still 1:01 left. So they went from 24.2
I was going
to
to say
25.
I'm really surprised that it didn't increase their win probability more, but I forgot there was still time on the clock.
Yep, and Seattle still had 2 timeouts at that point. So getting the ball after the kickoff, a minute left, 2 timeouts. Was pretty much a 50-50 proposition there after taking
Chad Reuter, by the way, points out a couple of teams that might be like this year's Packers. 2015 Denver, they were, I believe, 8th in DVOA. And the 2006 Colts, who I think were like 7th. And both of those teams went 12-4, so not quite as good a record as the Packers are going to end up with. But, yeah, that's pretty close. I think those two teams certainly turned it on in the playoffs. The Colts, especially on defense, right? They were a completely different defense in the playoffs in 2006. So those two teams, I think, fall into that category. It's probably not right to say that there's never been a team like the Packers that's gone on to win a Super Bowl. There have been, but never
to the
extent as this year's Packers. And that's another similarity between the 2006 Colts and this year's Packers. Is the Colts got back Bob Sanders, and the Packers are probably going to get back Zadarius Smith, Jair Alexander, and or David Bakhtiari.
Yep, and that's what I was going to say. Hopefully they could kind of do that same thing as you mentioned, having those guys come back. It's always kind of, you never know exactly how they're going to come back with all that time off, but as good as they are, you would expect them to at least be a big help because the defense was really good. I forget what they were DVOA. They were top 10, I think, at one point through like the first half of the season or first 6-7 games before they lost Alexander and
now the Packers are 21st on defense, but 2nd on offense behind only Tampa Bay.
Yeah. So hopefully, those guys coming back for them will help out, but that's to be seen. Like you said, it's not a guarantee that they come back, but probably we'll have those guys back. So. All
right, back to the biggest plays of the week. Number 4, Jaguars and Jets.
Yeah, number 4 was the Trevor Lawrence scramble. Got 26 yards down to the 5, setting them up for potentially the game-winning touchdown. It did not end up happening, but at that point, setting them up first and goal at the 5 with 32 seconds left, giving them time for 4 cracks at the end zone, which they got 4. We'll come up to that last one in a minute, but this play to set them up down there at the 5 was a 33.2% increase. Good for number 4 in the win probability swings. Number 3 mentioned was the Browns and Packers. Baker Mayfield's interception cost them 46.9% in win probability. And number 2, I was just mentioning the Jaguars when they had 4th and goal at the 1, 12 seconds left, basically last play of the game, barring a defensive penalty. Incomplete pass. There was a penalty. Jaguars fans thought they, maybe had a little hope there that it was going to be on the defense, but it was on the offense for an illegal shift. So regardless of what happened on that play, it wouldn't have counted. And this one turned the ball over, a 52.5% decrease. So a big loss there, obviously, into the game. And then a similar play on number 1. You've got really a good game, or a close game, I should say, between 2 bad teams coming down to the wire. And the Lions actually had 1st and goal at the 9 with 39 seconds left. So same situation where they've got 4 cracks at the end zone, plenty of time to get it there. But the pass on 1st down is intercepted by the Falcons. So the Lions.
Oh, it's a misprint. It should say 1st and 9 on the Atlanta 9.
Yeah, so that was 1st down. So a tough break there, but Tim Boyle kept him in it and took him down with a chance to win there. But
great break for the Lions draft pick. And I will point out this was the Football Outsiders pick of the week. And the pick of the week is now 10-6 against the spread.
So the Falcons was, or the what was
the Lions plus 5.5 was the pick of the week.
Okay.
The line ended at plus 7, but when I recorded the pick of the week video, it was plus 5.5. So that's what I count when I count up the pick of the week. And so it covered. And so the pick of the week is 10-6.
Yeah, and an interesting thing on this one too, Scott Brown, when we were doing our podcast this morning, mentioned the line closed, I think, there at 42.5. So sitting at 36 there, was I don't think anyone betting the over would have gotten it anyway, because they
probably would not have kicked the extra point.
Yes,
because the game was over.
Yes,
no, they would have kicked the extra point, because with 39 seconds left, if he hits on this first one, there's still 30 seconds left for Atlanta to come back. So you do kick the extra point, and it does get the over.
That's right. That's what the other thing was. It's not likely, but if they had taken up all 40 seconds somehow, if someone accidentally comes down in bounds at that point, but yeah, most likely there would have been, that extra point would have been huge for a lot of people there potentially, but it did not happen, unfortunately, for those people and for Lions fans. But like you said, help draft stock. I know the Jaguars losing keeps them, I think, at the number 1 draft pick, but Detroit's still there at number 2 and in play for the top pick.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Because of the fact that there really are no quarterbacks who deserve to go at the top of the draft this year, but the quarterback is such an important position, and the Lions need one.
Yeah.
Or will they go?
They've got Jared Goff.
A lot of people feel pass rushers are the top players in this year's draft, so I'm guessing the Jaguars will go pass rusher number 1. Let's don't forget, by the way, if you are watching right now, please ask questions in the comments. Please subscribe to the show and watch us every day. Rate us 5 stars, especially if you're listening afterwards on the Football Outsiders Podcast Network. Let us talk about the best coaching decisions of the week, and so many of them this week that, like, for example, none of those Bills-Patriots 4th down decisions make it.
And a couple of those
probability change.
Yeah, a couple of those were even 4% that still didn't make it. Number 5 was 4.8, almost 5%, and that was the Matt LaFleur decision we mentioned at the top, where they went forward on 4th and 1 from their own 34 on their opening drive. Was 4.8% increase. Interestingly, too, all 5 of our best decisions this week were successful 4th down go, so that's always nice to see. Number 4 was the Jaguars and Jets. Jaguars down 3 into the first quarter. Pretty straightforward one here, not much to explain. It's a 4th and 1 at the Jets 39. That's a long field goal for Matt Wright, 57 yards. And the punt really doesn't do you much there. So Bevel making the right call to go for it. It was a 5.8% increase in pre-snap win probability, and ended up getting a 20-yard gain off of it. So big play there. Number 3, Vic Fangio, who we'll see on both of these lists, Interestingly, we kind of think of him as more of a conservative decision maker.
This year, he's
Last
been
year,
much more aggressive than last year. He was the most conservative coach in the league.
yeah, and he finished in our coach rankings. He was down at like 28th or 29th. This year, he's up actually in the top 10, and that's when we get a lot of criticism for like, oh, you've got Fangio higher than Belichick and this and that. Well, he's been 13th in CCI and 13th in EPI, so they haven't been a horrible team on the field, and he's also been pretty good with his fourth down decision making. So that props him up pretty high. Again, he's number 9 coming into this week, and he might drop based on his couple errors and some of the coaches around him that did really well. But still, well, he had a good decision here. 4th and 1 at his own 34 with 5.5 minutes left, trailing by 4. Still has 2 timeouts. This is one where I think we see a lot of coaches punt the ball, unless you're a Dan Campbell or a Brandon Staley. There's a handful of guys. Fangio's one I would not have expected to go for it here, to be honest. As much as he's been better this year, this is one that I didn't think there was any way he was going to do it while I was watching it, and he did. So it was a 6% increase, and they ended up getting 16 yards on this one. So that's another thing we kind of talk about is there's always that opportunity for the overage yardage on 4th down versus just picking up the 1 yard that just is worth so much more there. Number 2, we've got there's Ron Middleton that was in for Robert Saleh for the Jets this week. He ends up on both lists as well. Here he's number 2 on our best decisions. 4th and goal at the 1. Again, pretty straightforward unless you're at the end of the half. You're going to – even sometimes then you'll go for it. But here, you don't see many coaches kicking on 4th and goal at the 1 anymore. And this one was a 7% increase in pre-snap win probability, and the Jets were able to convert for a touchdown there to extend their lead.
Tackle eligible play, one of 3, I believe, 3 tackle eligible touchdowns yesterday. And now I know what Ron Middleton looks like. Yeah. And that is a great beard.
It is. Yeah. I actually completely forgot that Saleh was out of this game this morning. We're looking and really, someone caught the mistake for us. But yeah, Ron Middleton had a pretty good game overall. We'll see. He had a big error late in the game that we'll get to on our worst, but stepping in did a pretty good job there. And then number 1 is a guy, the fill-in coach, Rich Bisaccia for the Raiders. He's on the list of the best here, but has not been good this year. I think, if I remember correctly, someone was asking us recently that when John Gruden resigned after week 5, Bisaccia was in those first few weeks. When we did our first coach rankings after week 9, I believe it was, I think in CCI, the Raiders combination was like top 10 at that point and have fallen all the way down to 28th in CCI this year, 29th overall. So Bisaccia has just kind of really, really ruined their ranking there. But this one, he made the right call here, 4th and 1 on the 46, leading by 1 early in the 4th. I was kind of surprised to see him. Most coaches I think are going to go for it here, but the way he's coached and been pretty conservative, I was a little surprised to see him go for it. But he made the right call there. It was an 8.7% increase in pre-snap win probability, and they were able to convert on that one, which is a big conversion for them.
All right, let's talk about the 5 worst play calls of the week. The decisions that had the most negative impact on win probability. And what's nice is that only a couple of these are kind of that high. Some of them, these are even the 5th and 4th are kind of low.
Yeah, these are ones that are, especially number 5, even number 3, the number is going to be up there. But when we get to it, it's kind of could go either way. But number 5 was from all the way back Thursday night, 49ers and Titans. 49ers were down 7. 9.5 minutes left. It was 4th and 9 at the Tennessee 43. And this was just like 5 minutes prior, 6 minutes at the end of the third quarter. There was a tie game, and the 49ers went for it on 4th and 6 at the Tennessee 40. But this time they choose to punt. And, 4th and 9 is a long way. 9.5 minutes left. The punt worked out. They got it down to the 3. And they ended up getting the ball back and able to tie it. But it ended up being a 3.7% error to punt. And this is one we kind of talked about this morning. There's an argument that can be made against it. It's a smaller one, that 3.5, is a decent amount, but really this one is just kind of, so we stand by it and defend it, but not as bad. Like you said, we've had a lot of really good decisions this week that would normally push some of these out of our top 5. So that one ends up being the error. Number 5. Number 4, Vic Fangio. He's got number 3 and number 4. This one's a 4th and 3 at the Vegas 37, trailing by 1 late in the third quarter. It's a long field goal, not out of reach for McManus by any means, but in kind of that middle range where you missed, which they did, and you're giving up the ball pretty much at midfield, losing by 1, and it's a 4th and 3. A punt in that situation does you really no good at flipping field position. So, like the going forward a little bit better in the field goal, only a 4.2% error here, so nothing huge, but still would have liked to see him go for it there, be a little bit more aggressive. I guess for what it's worth, when it came down to it, that best decision he made was late in the game. So when it was coming down to the wire, he made the correct call. A little bit earlier on, maybe thinking there's a lot of time left, wanting to just it would have been a 2-point lead, but unfortunately missed it in that situation. Number 3 is one that's a little bit questionable, and it's kind of interesting the way it played out. The Broncos were down 4, it was 7-3 with 2:53 left in the second quarter. Both teams still have all 3 timeouts, 4th and 1 at their own 17. So the model has this as a 4.9% error to punt. And the way you kind of look at it, if you punt here, you basically give the Raiders likely the last possession, and they get the ball after halftime. So they can get that kind of double dip there and get a couple points or get some points there. If you don't get it, and they have the ball at your 17, they're going to score probably pretty quickly, even if it's just a field goal and you're able to stop them. You've got some time to answer. We kind of talk about that a lot, being able to answer. But the way it played out, I think it ended up being a Vegas fumble that the Broncos then got a field goal off of. Then the very next play for the Raiders after the kickoff was an interception taken down to the 1. The Broncos got a touchdown. So they got 10 points out of it after punting, and taking a lead into halftime. But on a 4th and 1 like that,
you can't count on fumbles and interceptions
exactly
coming your way.
Absolutely, especially not 2 out of 3 plays, or 2 plays in a row, I guess, for the Raiders, both turnovers there. But yeah, just based on the time at the end of the half, the fact the Raiders are getting the ball there, you don't want to give them that double dip opportunity. So that ends up being 4.9%. Number 2 is kind of a tough one. So I know, Aaron, we talk about it all the time. You all listening have probably heard us talking about kicking a field goal to go from, by the way. Right, but kicking a field goal to go from 3 to 6, we think is horrible. But this is one you're kicking a field goal, and this is the Jets with 1:49 left, 4th and goal at the 2, kicking a field goal to go from 2 to 5 to where a field goal cannot beat you. So that might seem like the right call, but it's not. And I saw actually someone on Twitter saying, I don't think the Jets, might have been a Jets reporter, didn't think they should have kicked it. Go for it, put the game away. If you get the touchdown, the extra point, you're up 9 with 1:40 left, and the game's pretty much over. And people saying, well, the way it played out, if we would have kicked the field goal, or if we would have gone for it and not gotten it, the way Lawrence and the Jaguars moved down the field so quickly, we would have lost on a field goal anyway. But you can't look at it like that, as we know. So going for it, when I ran the numbers this morning, the Jets only needed a 25% conversion rate, or required 25% in order for it to be worth it to go for it. Looking at a 4th and goal from the 2, with two bad teams, with 2 bad defenses as well, probably going to be around 46, 48, 50%. So your required conversion rate is half of what you're expected to convert there. So that's just pretty much a no-brainer to go for it. Put the game away. If you don't get it, you're still forcing a Jaguars offense that's not good to go 60 yards to get a decent field goal. That would be a long 50s or high 50s field goal, 65, 70 yards, get something a little bit more manageable. And, just the risk or the reward you have of being able to just pretty much close it out right there outweighs the risk of you getting stopped and them going down to score.
Right. A lot of it always gets to, a lot of these coaching decisions we talk about get to the question of winning the game versus extending the game. Mm-hmm. And the coaches make decisions that extend the game more than coaches make decisions sometimes that win the game.
Yeah, so that one, like I said, Middleton for the most part was really good. That was his one big error, but they were able to come away with the win. So looks a little bit better, although it wasn't the correct decision to do that. And then number 1, we talked about the Packers, Matt LaFleur at the end of the game there, just giving the ball up, giving the Browns a chance to win it, basically with no time left on the clock. The defense was able to come up pretty big, but it did not. I see we've got a question about Dan Campbell's decision to kick that field goal late.
Yeah,
that actually comes in at number 6.
Talk about it. I wrote a note to talk about it because I think the issue is that Detroit's win probability was so low at that point, mm-hmm. that the percentage of win probability lost is less than 3.7%, and it doesn't make the bottom 5.
We had them at 15% if they go for it. It was a 3.5% error, so it's just outside the top 5 at number 6. I mean, there could be an argument to putting that one over in there and taking out, Vic Fangio, number 3, that 4th and 1 at his own 17. I would think that, the Dan Campbell one's probably, or I would say is worse than that one. But yeah, just outside the top 5, so really close.
It's interesting because he did think through it. He defended the decision in the press conference this morning by saying, I had a feeling that Arthur Smith was going to be conservative and we were going to be able to stop the run and get the ball back. And Atlanta has a bad running game. Cordarrelle Patterson's been good this year, but mostly on receiving. Mm-hmm. And he was counting on the other coach being conservative, which is not the worst decision in the world. But overall, it's unlikely you're going to get that close to the goal line again. Now, as it turns out, they did get that close to the goal line again, but it's unlikely that you are. Like, your knowledge at the time, like you're on the 8, like you're unlikely to get this close again. Go for it.
And the way that they got the ball back, you can't count on either being I think it was an Atlanta fumble on the second play or something. It's not even like they stopped them and drove
I wasn't watching that game, but yeah.
Yeah, so they ended up something you can't count on. But you said with Dan Campbell, that's one of those guys, even though it's his first year, based on what he's done this year, I would kind of give him maybe a little bit of a benefit of the doubt. But still, that one is one that I think is
he's not been a conservative stick in the mud there. He's made a lot of good decisions. He's been aggressive. Hitchhiker's Pie says, how much of the Packers' decision is considered bad because of how efficient the Packers' offense is? If it was an average offense, would going for it still have been recommended?
So, yeah, I can actually answer that one. The way we look at it, what we'll do, and we've talked about it on here before, looking at, for every error that we run, we look at a counter case. So basically, we have it accounting for the Packers offense, the Packers defense, Browns offense, Browns defense. What we then do is we take every single play and we'll run it as if the offense has the worst offense and the worst defense in the league and say, hey, all right, is this still an error? If so, we call it a high confidence error. So in this situation, even if we look at it that way, looking at the counter case where Green Bay is absolutely horrible, the Browns are really good, it still comes out, it looks like, to almost a 7% error to punt in that situation, even if you're a really bad team against a very good team. So, yeah, the Packers offense makes it a bigger error, but the directional decision to go for it is going to be the same regardless of who's out there.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Monday Night Football, the Ian Book Show. Dun, 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 dun.
This
Ian
one is
one of the most
interesting.
Despised prospects I've ever seen. Someone pointed out the only prospect that has probably gotten worse response on Twitter who was drafted in the first 4 rounds was Christian Hackenberg.
Man,
Dolphins have won 6 straight. And I picked before the season, I picked both the Dolphins and the Patriots to make the playoffs, and it's possible that they do. The Dolphins would need to win out, and the Patriots would need to beat the Jaguars, and then the Patriots, if they lose to the Dolphins, would need a little bit of help to get in, but it's possible that both the Patriots and the Dolphins make the playoffs. Market is currently at Dolphins -3. I will point out about this game the incredible difference in pass DVOA this year. The Tua Tagovailoa is at 1.6%, whereas Jacoby Brissett was at -21.
Wow.
And for the Saints, Jameis Winston was at +14. Trevor Siemian, because of one really good game, is at -4. Taysom Hill -31, and Ian Book probably worse than that. So this is not 2 equal 7 and 7 teams.
Mm-mm.
Like, even though DVOA has the Saints higher than the Dolphins, if you consider only the Tua Dolphins, and if you consider Ian Book, like, our pick is Miami -3.
Yeah, and that's ours comes out to Miami -3 as well. So we're pretty much both spot on there. The Saints defense, I think if it's going to be a close game, obviously the Saints defense is going to hold Miami because we're not, not really knowing. It's really just a lot of uncertainty. Our model, it has -3, but it's really hard to know because it's a lot of judgment. Like I said, based on we don't know what to expect from Ian Book.
Right. And also, how much do we adjust? I don't think we adjusted for COVID, people missing from COVID, but I believe the Saints have more COVID absences, not just the quarterbacks, but defensive players. The Saints have more COVID absences than the Dolphins do. So, I mean, I'm actually pretty confident about the Dolphins in this game.
Yeah, and so the spread we don't really see much. The total we stray a little bit from the market, but it's kind of it was at 37.5. Last I saw it total, which is very low. We have it it comes out to 43 points. So while it seems like we're taking the over, one thing to note in looking at this is that 43 points is tied for our lowest total projection of the week. So it's really hard, I think, to project an NFL game for under 40 points just based on the way scoring is. This is one that is easy to, but with the uncertainty and not adjusting for COVID, like you said, we have it at 43, but it is still our lowest of the week. So, it's still saying it's going to be a low scoring game. So interesting there. And then, big game, playoff game for both. I don't know. You probably know how it works because looking at the standings where Miami is currently 11th. If they win, they go to 8-7. They have the tiebreaker over Baltimore.
They would move into the 7th spot.
So they would, since they have the tiebreaker over Baltimore, even though Las Vegas has the tiebreaker over Miami, they still move up ahead of Baltimore.
I believe so. Yes, because of the way it works when you have 3 teams and then when you have 2 teams. Mm-hmm. I believe Miami would have the 7th spot, but Miami, their last 2 games are tough at Tennessee and then New England. So it's going to be tough. We only have them at like 10% to make the playoffs right now. But obviously, winning this game is the first step.
Yep, huge for New Orleans as well. They're sitting at 8th. They would move up. They lost to Philly, so I think they would stay 8th even if they win. But would be, can't really, pretty much every game now at this point on seems like it's just a huge playoff game for both teams. And then looking at this one, the market, everyone, no surprise, is heavy on Miami. 82% of the bets, 71% of the money, not, much there in the way of people backing New Orleans. So pretty much Miami is the pick here, I think, all the way, pretty much across the board.
Yeah, I feel pretty strongly about it. But hey, if Ian Book surprises us all and has a big game, I do have him on a DFS team. So go Ian Book, I guess.
Yeah. I think I put him in my loser league, so I'm counting out. I'm going the opposite.
I have him in the loser league also, but I also had Jake Fromm, and Jake Fromm had an awesome loser league game.
I thought I had Jake Fromm, and I checked, and I did not have him in there. I thought I went with Book and Fromm, but oh well.
All right. Thank you all for watching the show today. No matter where you're watching us, please subscribe to watch more shows for the rest of the year and then into 2022. Tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern, Derek Claxton and Scott Spratt with the last Tuesday fantasy show to get you ready for probably your playoff final. Hopefully, you pick up the right players that help you win when all of your best players get COVID, which is what's happening to a lot of people. Don't forget to subscribe to the show, especially if you're listening to us as a podcast afterwards. God, I haven't even gotten to, don't forget, we're still selling FO Plus subscriptions for 99 cents a week for an annual subscription. Get all of our stats and splits, get picks against the spread, get fantasy projections and fantasy research data, all kinds of stuff. 99 cents a week for an annual subscription. Go to footballoutsiders.com/subscribe or click the link in the description of this show. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for those of you who commented and asked questions. I will be back on Wednesday with Mike Tanier for the Ask Us Anything show, probably with Rob Weintraub cavelling about the Cincinnati Bengals. Until then, thank you, Ian, and I leave you all in the pleasant hands of Scott and Derek for tomorrow. Enjoy Monday Night Football tonight. The Ian Book